Sweet. So hello, I'm Chris Thacker. I work at Money Supermarket, as Matt's already alluded to, and welcome to the very first Staffordshire Test Gathering. So this is either going to keep you enthralled for the next 15 minutes and make you come back, or you'll never ever return perhaps. So Matt's given himself a bit of a job here. Why is self-development important? So careers aren't what they used to be. My dad did 43 years at his business. So he worked for Pilkington's, the glass manufacturer in St Helens. So he was 16 to 59, worked there. So I don't think he's ever had a job interview. I was thinking that on the train down here. I don't think he ever probably had a job interview elsewhere. So, in terms of training and stuff, it was expected that the business would provide that. Businesses these days have very short life cycles. I think people will stay for 2 to 3 years. So they don't invest perhaps at the level that they used to be. So you need to kind of fill that gap. The pace of change is so high that if you did, your business is willing to invest, approval processes and getting the money by your bosses to go and do that training, for instance, can sometimes be very difficult. So, you need to kind of keep on top of it yourself. And then I put this phrase in, learning has never been easier. And I was laughing to myself as I read my notes on the train, because that doesn't mean anything. What I was actually trying to say was, with the kind of rise of the internet and open online courses and things, it's easy now to learn off like the best people. So, the kind of AI experts over in Silicon Valley, for instance, they all do courses these days and write books and stuff. So, say 20, 30, 40 years ago, being able to kind of get the access to that kind of expertise was just completely impossible. One other thing is there, so I don't know what other people's interview processes are like, but mine's very focused on self-development. So I have about 4 or 5 things that I try and check. And one of the things I ask for is self-development. So I will ask, what meetups do you go to? What kind of conferences have you been to? What books are you reading? How do you self-develop? And ask those kind of questions. I do believe that, there's a kind of element on the kind of employee and on the business itself to develop people. So if I've got someone who kind of is saying, and I do get a lot of people who will kind of give it lip service, that certainly puts a down on it from me, from my perspective, from an interview purpose. I got this quote. So when I first originally was approached by Matt to talk about giving a talk or whatever, and he gave me the theme of self-development in testing, the first thing that sprung to mind was this quote. So I'm appreciating that is not spelled Abraham Lincoln, by the way. Again, I was reading my notes on the way down and I started laughing because I was like, right, these slides, the first 2 are absolutely horrendous. I'm not saying they get you any better, but this is obviously an image that I've taken from the internet and didn't, great tester, I've gone so remote these days I can't even check spellings of things. And this kind of quote spoke straight out to me, it's one that I'm very aware of. And I was kind of thinking about, how do we talk about self-development in testing? And I was thinking, actually, the way I want to approach it is to talk about self-development in general, and then maybe more focus it on testing. And this is kind of something that Abraham Lincoln's talking about here. The first 4 hours he's thinking about how he sharpens the axe, or sharpens the axe. And I was thinking we could talk about how you would do self-development in general before I'd get into QA was my kind of thought process. So firstly, you're going to do is work out your learning style. I don't know if anyone's ever done any kind of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, but there's 3 kind of main styles. You've got your visual style, you've got your auditory style, and you've got your haptic style. They're very much as they say on the tin. So visual stuff's like reading and doing videos. Your auditory stuff is around like podcasts and listening to things. And your haptic thing, I always class it as, your hands-on training, you're actually getting involved. Now, I don't think there's many things you can do to self-develop that don't mix these styles. If you come to like a conference or a meetup, you're both seeing and hearing things. If you're watching videos and you're copying the kind of examples, you're kind of mixing all 3 of them up. So it's something, that I think if I was going to, when I do self-development, I think about that. So I'm a very visual person, so I do a lot of reading and things. Whereas Lee, one of the kind of co-founders of Liverpool Tester Gathering, is completely the other way. Doesn't do anything visual. Everything's auditory for him. So everything he does is podcasts and kind of listening to things. So I would certainly suggest have a look at your learning style, or try and work out how you've learned best in the past and tailor yourself to that. So there's a concept called deliberate practice. So let's have a drink here. Deliberate practice is I don't know if anyone's ever read the book The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, or Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And deliberate practice is this concept of just practicing enough out of your comfort zone that you can learn something. So, if you go down the gym as an example and try to put 500 pounds on a bench press, you're just going to hurt yourself. So, say you can bench press 100 pounds by going to like 105 pounds, you kind of push yourself just enough out of your comfort zone that your body can adapt to it. And deliberate practice is the exact same thing. So it breaks down into like kind of couple of steps. So The first one is break the overall process down into parts. So a really good example of this at the minute, and slightly off topic perhaps, is so England penalties. So obviously they did it well last night, but they've spent years talking about, Dan Ashworth, the head of the FA, has spent years looking at the process of how penalties, so it's kind of like the ordering of the penalty takers, how they, even the walk, because apparently you got to get in the focus, which apparently we've not been doing for years, the actual kick itself, and they've broke the process down now and worked on that. So, you know, if you think about golf as another example, you know, you've got the driving, you've got the short range game, you've got putting. So, you know, if you're a really good driver, there's no point improving your golf by just focusing on that. You need to really focus on the things that are in. So, you know, the second part was identify your weaknesses. So I've just said golf. So, you know, you can drive. What's up, mate?
Sorry, Chris.
Can I get you in the eye with this or not?
In the football as well, Southgate apparently made them do penalties at the end of each training session.
Because they were tired.
To simulate the times.
Oh. Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah. So knowing Duncan the way I do, I can't believe he knows anything about football. He's the kind of person who I'm surprised if he knew there was a game on last night. Yeah, so no, fair play, really. I think that's a good idea. Yeah. So I think that's a perfect example. So you identify your weaknesses and you focus on those. You test new strategies for each session. So, you know, say you golf, you know, you might buy yourself a new putter if putting's a problem. You might start using belly putters, different kind of strategies. I don't play any golf, by the way, so I probably should have used a better example than this, because they're like the 2 or 3 things I know. And then you bring it all back together. So, you know, if you improve the parts you're bad on, you would hope by bringing it all back together, you actually improve the whole sum, really. So short, sharp sessions. So deliberate practice is very tiring. So there's a great example of violinists over in the States, and they did some studies on them. And what they were saying was the best kind of violinists kind of did as much training as the other ones, but broke it down to like 90-minute sessions. So they never went, you know, into 2-3 hours. It was all very short, had rest and come back. They also said as well that they slept a lot more than the kind of other kind of I think it was at a school in New York where they had kind of, they summarised them to great, good and average kind of violinists. And the stuff around the great ones was they rested a lot more and they did a lot more short practices than the other ones did. Focus on the bad points, embrace the struggle. So don't do the things that you're good at. You know, it's quite simple that, you know, when you're doing training of things, you just keep hammering the same things that you already know. You actually need to move on to things that are difficult for you, you're not aware of. So the violinists, again, the best ones did the pieces that they struggled to play, whereas the kind of average and good ones would just do the same thing that they kind of were always doing. So it would just basically not really push them anywhere. And then the feedback loops were essential. So this is really difficult. I've got a little bit later, I think, where I'm trying to talk about how to bring this back into QA, but we're not very objective about ourselves. So it's difficult, you know, you can record yourself or you can get a coach or whatever. So when you talk about deliberate practice, most of the people have coaches, and what they would say is, you know, change this, do this. Whereas, you know, a lot of people, they don't really do that. We kind of just muddle on and we're not really being smart about how we develop. So this question, it says leverage your resources. So this is the kind of thing about what does your company provide. So I know at Money Supermarket we have like books 24/7, we have Safari Books online, you know, we have coaches we can get available to, we have things that the HR team have set up and things. So go and see what your company has available. I think most companies I've ever worked at have had some sort of like online book kind of thing, you know, and see what courses and things are available for you. Who do you know? So, you know, it's use your network. So I know when myself and Duncan are talking about things, we'll happily bounce ideas off each other. You know, you might know some sort of developer at work who can help you if you want to go into automation, or, you know, friends or whatever who will happily help you out. You know, Twitter and things are great, you know, for being able to connect with these people and listen and learn and stuff. Meetup, yeah, meetups. So can't say meetup every time, mate. You know, I'm going later on. Yeah, exactly. But meetups exactly is a perfect example. So the Liverpool Tester Gathering as a meetup was founded because we met each other at the Manchester Tester Gathering. So we'd come together and said we wanted to open one in Liverpool, and we moved from that. You know, the amount of connections that I've got from both Manchester and Liverpool. You know, Matt, I think I met you at Test Bash, was it? You know, yeah. So these kind of things, and you kind of help each other out. What is out there and available? So, you know, what kind of stuff can you get for free? I think Duncan summed it up far better than I did with his Whirlpool model. But, you know, my first thing is when I'm thinking about some sort of training is, what is free? You know, like you don't want to commit so quickly, so you go and look for the free stuff, you look for the cheap stuff after that. You know, Udemy courses, for instance, are about a tenner a go. And I think that's a nice little pain point that you've kind of invested 3 pints or so into a little bit of training. Everything I work out is based on pints, I'm not going to lie. Every currency and every world I do is always based on going back to pints so that I can work it out. But, you know, it's a nice little pain point because, you know, you invested something, you've probably got some good quality content. And then I mentioned Twitter here, so Twitter's a great for helping find content. I find Twitter I just use it as a news resource, a training resource. You know, you follow the right people, and hopefully, you know, we talked a little bit before about the echo chamber and stuff, and I find I'm going to leave Duncan for that one. But, you know, it's about That's how I find a lot of content. I see a lot of retweeted links that I'll copy and save, and then I'll read it again. I don't know if you need medium.com, by the way. That's a really good resource that I would suggest. I probably should have put it on there. And that's like, you get 3 or 4, so most of the stories are free, but you also get 3 or 4 kind of paid stories, but I think it's like $50 for the year. You can use incognito mode and things to steal the stories, I will admit that, you know, I am that cheap. I think I've got about 3 or 4 different accounts that I use on there. I realised the other day it's like 30 quid or something, so I probably should just bust a bullet, but you know, I will admit I am cheap like that. So how would you apply this in QA? So, you know, you've got to find something you want to learn and scratch your own itch. So it's difficult to keep the motivation going when you're learning things. So one of the tricks is just to fix stuff that you want to do. So, you know, if you have some automation problem that you want to go and tackle, you know, in work, that's going to get you motivated and keep going. So, you know, it only has to be small, and, you know, block out your time. So we'll talk a little bit about how I do this. It might even be the next slide, later on. But just blocking the time out in your calendar. I don't know what other people's diaries like, but mine's horrendous. So I definitely put, like, you know, an hour or 2 a day in where I've got my own time so that I can do these things. So I read books, I use online courses, so I'm a huge reader. I mentioned before about being visual. I read on the train down here, I read on the train to work, you know, I mentioned about the commute here. You know, if you drive to work, get audiobooks and podcasts, and not something Lee does. You know, if you're on the train, then read if that's what you want to do. So the first thing I do in the office when I get in is read a chapter of a book. So I have multiple books on the go at the minute, but one of the ones I use, Safari Books Online in work, really good, by the way. It's like 399 quid, but every kind of Black Friday, it's about £200. It seems to be 50% off every Black Friday, and there's absolute ton of books on there, you know, so it saved me a fortune, because IT books tend to be about 15, 20 quid a go. So when I get in the office, this is something I've got a lot of people in the office doing as well. First thing I do is do some reading. If it's coding you want to do some coding, if it's whatever you want to do. But, you know, the idea I have is it kind of settles me for the day, and I feel like I've actually done a high value activity, as opposed to just getting straight onto like whatever emails or stuff's coming to my kind of office. Obviously, I mentioned before, I'm a test manager, so I manage quite a few people. So how do I encourage it? So share resources, that's share the stuff that we're learning. You know, so I'm constantly sending the team, like, you know, blogs that I've seen, things that I've seen. I really want the team to, like, you know, embrace learning. You know, it's something I put in every single person's objectives. So they have one objective around doing some sort of self-development. They decide what that is, but they have to talk about that and do that with me, because I think that's a huge part of the job. Provide a safe space. A lot of bad companies are out there. Money Supermarket isn't one of them, but, you know, I'm very much of the kind of opinion that, you know, if someone bothers someone who works with me about kind of learning and doing things, that's on me. You know, I say to the team, I fully encourage it, and I want them to, you know, down tools and spend an hour a day thinking about how they're getting better as testers. So, you know, say to them, you know, if anyone has an issue, that's my issue, so just send them straight to me and I'll deal with it. And then provide training. So, you know, I do a lot of on-the-job training with the team. We talk a lot about what they want to learn, and if I can provide it, I do it. I've got a lot of people at the minute talking about automation in some of my teams. One of the things that I don't really do with the team is send them on automation courses. So there's like £2,000 courses to learn Java or something in 3 days, and I always flip it on its head and say, if you were learning Spanish or French, you would not go on a 3-day course and expect to learn it. So I try and do a lot of that stuff in-house, but then it's about picking and doing the right training. I think, you know, MOT is a great example of, you know, really kind of training that I think it's worth its weight in value. Some of the certification stuff Duncan alluded to before was quite expensive. I appreciate these are like my opinions and thoughts now, but you have asked me to speak, so I will give them, but, you know, I think there's like a lot of expensive training out there that I try and avoid the certification stuff, unless I think there's value in it, and I will go into the kind of course detail with the team and provide that. And then how to persuade your boss. So I think it's about, you know, bosses are usually quite busy. You know, the higher up the company you go, it's more and more difficult to have these conversations about reducing the noise. So you need to provide a business case, I would say, is the thing that I think you need to do. So share resources is example. If you're doing an online course, why would other people not be able to join you? We have a video club, we call it, on a Tuesday at Money Supermarket. So about 5 or 6 people will generally get in what we call the pod. It's basically two sofas next to each other, you know, and we'll kind of go through videos and stuff. So watch like old kind of TED Talks, or watch like stuff from like conferences and things, and we'll talk about them. Start small. So, you know, if you go to your boss and say, actually, I want like a 4-week course over in Las Vegas or Albuquerque, you know, you're very much likely to get that. You know, we say you want £30 for a conference or whatever, you're pretty much going to be able to get it. And then explain the return on investment. So your boss needs to know, you know, he's got a lot of money or whatever that has to go somewhere. So understand why he should put it into you as opposed to somebody else. And that's about it, really. I think for my talk, it's about 5 minutes, I think, at most. I'm a fast talker anyhow.